I think there's 10 boys in the class and 1 girl.
Nowadays, you can Google everything, right?
Before it was teaching information, and now it's teaching how to use information,
Exactly.
what information.
I think in this way, COVID was an opportunity.
Some of the teachers were terrified of having to give class
Otherwise,
on the Zoom.
that's why you are here.
It's 50%.
Again, just my opinion. I don't want to vinculate this with my employer at all. But at all.
This is the Barcelona Tomorrow think tank powered by Harbour.Space, where we bring together people from different sectors who live and work in the city to discuss the future by understanding the past. We want to create a collaborative community of thinkers and doers to inspire and attract the right talent. For this episode, we invited 5 educational leaders to discuss how technology is reshaping learning methodologies and how educators need to adapt their approach to keep up with these changes. This is Barcelona Tomorrow, Future of Education. Thank you, all of you today, for being part of the Future of Education roundtable discussion as part of the series that we are creating at Harbour.Space, which is supported by Barcelona Activa. And today we're here to talk about the future of education, how technology is changing, and learning methodologies, and how educators need to adapt to new ways. So we're here with guests who are all part of the educating system in Barcelona, or were involved in the education in Barcelona. And we're looking forward to hearing your points of view and how you see things changing in the education system. So first of all, I'm going to introduce you. We have Susanna de Mesa sitting to my right, who is a maths teacher for the gifted children at the German School of Barcelona.
Mm-hmm.
Susanna, thank you for joining us. And can you just tell us a little bit about how you got into education and your role at the German school?
So I got into education just 4 years ago. Well, maybe a bit before because I as a mother, but as a teacher 4 years ago. And mainly because my passion for knowledge and for being with kids, I was looking for a meaningful job. And now I'm teaching maths, IT and economy at the German school, and I'm in charge of the talent development at that place.
Great, yeah. Great. Well, we look forward to hearing more about your experience and also particularly in talent development. Mm-hmm. And it's great that you've also, managed to switch your skills from finance into teaching.
Yeah.
And Roland, thank you for joining us today. You are a parent at ASB, American School of Barcelona, and also an investor into Edu-tech. So tell us a little bit about your interest in education and, your sort of, why you were interested in it.
Thank you. Thanks for asking me to come today. I mean, I'm really here as a consumer of education. I've got children at the ASB in Barcelona. I've spent most of my career looking at things to invest into, and usually for investment you need to see disruption, and when disruption takes place, then you often have value generation. And for me, education seems to be an area that is really ripe for that kind of change, that kind of disruption. And so I've been looking more closely at potential companies to invest into, and those sorts of companies that can disrupt the educational model. Okay, great. There's a lot of investment in education tech. Do you know the percentage of how much people are investing in education? There's an awful lot of interest at the moment in EdTech, but it's really still. It's not nearly at the scale of so many other sort of something techs, fintech or biotech. It's really just still at the beginning of that process. And you're beginning to see a lot of very talented people looking at ways of disrupting the educational model. But it's I don't know the numbers, but it's a fraction of the size of other areas. But it's gaining momentum. Yes. Okay. Great. Well, thank you for joining us today. And Serena, Washburn, who's originally from America. You came to Barcelona, 30 years ago?
Almost 30 years ago.
You worked for the Olympics originally?
Yes.
Okay, and you're head of admissions at the Benjamin Franklin School.
Yes, well, as you said, consumer and now working in education. So I've been in Barcelona for over 30 years. I'm the director of admissions at Benjamin Franklin, and admissions is something you don't study. All the other directors of admissions from other schools in Europe, I know it's something that we just kind of fall into. So people might have had backgrounds of marketing or communication, or they might be a teacher or administrator, and you just kind of fall into admissions. So I've been a parent at Benjamin Franklin for 18 years. This is my first year with no children at the school.
Wow.
And about 11 years ago, they asked me, I had been working in marketing, advertising, communication, to come on and work in marketing and communication at the school. And 2 years later, take over the school's admissions.
Okay, so you enjoy the interaction.
I love it.
Yeah, interacting.
I love hearing people's stories.
Amazing. Good. Well, I'm sure you'll be contributing to today's, its topic, and also providing lots of stories, we hope. Patricia, thank you very much for hosting us today.
Thank you.
We are here at St Paul's School, which is quite a special place. And you are the director of St Paul's International School. And tell us about, your sort of, and how you got into education. You've been in it for quite a number of years.
I've been working in education all my life, I would say, for at least 37 years. I started as a teacher. I got my degree on classical languages, so I was always interested in knowledge, in general knowledge, and languages as well. And I came here, started working as a teacher, and then getting more and more responsibility, all of them related to international relationships, international programs, that sort of things. And I became head teacher 17 years ago. And I've been putting the emphasis on doing a holistic approach to the teaching of the school, and to develop a special project with involving technology as well, and I would say kind of humanism,
Very
digital
nice.
Humanism. No,
Yes.
I mean, it's important for us, that part of the kids' development.
Definitely. And holistic, I like the idea of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just quickly on the holistic side, can you just kind of say how you're implementing that?
Well, I mean, it's kids first. Kids first. I mean, personal development first, and then all the means and sources and instruments we have in school at their services. And that's the main point. I mean, we balance all the things we do with the kids. We try to get a balance, quite Ciceronian in the classical perspective. And we try to get the best practices all around the world. We've been searching and finding, and then we try to put together this one in the service of the kids, of the personal service. One of the important things for us is to get the kids, to help the kids to get to their goals. I mean, their goals are our success and no other way. And that's it. I mean, individuals first. That's the main point.
Great. Okay. Well, I'd like to hear more about that. And Jacobo Vilella, who's head of the Spanish National Olympic Team for Informatics and Chief Information Officer, I was about to say International Officer, at Aula School. Yeah. So, Jacobo, thank you for joining us today. Tell us about your experience and what your role is at Aula.
Well, it all started, I was my first year in university, and I was doing an internship for a teacher in the university. And by summer, he called me, he rang me and asked, I've been offered a job in IT in a school. It's called Aula. Are you interested? I asked my mother, she said, yes, you should take it. It's a very good school, take it. So I began working there. And very quickly, something happened. They need a teacher. They asked me. I had never even thought about it. So it was very unasked for. But I've always been the sort of person in school where someone asked me the solution of an exercise, and I would rather tell them how to solve it than telling the solution immediately. So I don't know, it came naturally, and it's been 15 years there now.
Amazing. And have you seen a lot of changes since you first started at Aula to today?
Not major changes in Aula or anywhere else, but definitely small details. Yes.
Okay, so but you're still there, which is a good sign.
Yeah.
Yes. So let's talk about education and how it's evolving, and actually what's disrupting the education field. In terms of what are the external factors that are playing a key role in the change of education, and which, for example, technology, remote, hybrid teaching, learning styles. Patricia, tell us what changes you're seeing in terms of education changing.
Well, first thing, globalization, absolutely, a very important factor. The other thing is the need of learning languages, without a doubt. And this is something in Spain, we have an important lack of learning languages. Of course, the COVID thing has made a great impact all over the world, but in terms of education, helped us to realize the importance of using well all the digital instruments and sources that we have at hand.
Right.
And this is one good thing in terms of,
So in terms of, when COVID happened, how did you manage, and what took place in terms of digital?
Well,
learning?
we were lucky because we have been using iPads throughout the school for 7 years before. So we were used to that. So the only thing we had to do was kind of adjustments with the families from home, implement different timetables so that they could comply with all the needs and requirements we needed, and try to help them to have a family life there, because there were, all of a sudden 5 people living together 8 hours a day, and they were not used to. So, some kind of things. In terms of teachers, the important thing was we had everything planned in terms of academical content. And the little thing we had was with the little ones, with the kids, early years kids, 6, 7, 5 years old. It was difficult for them. But from 80 years old till the end, second of batch, it was really, really easy for us. So we were lucky in that aspect.
Okay. So when COVID happened, obviously, there were some children that had COVID, so they would then be learning from home.
Exactly.
And then they would be able to dial into the classroom.
Exactly. We kind of hybrid teaching. We have iPads, projection, the teachers, the kids.
Great.
Yeah.
And, how do you think, has COVID impacted teaching? Because, it's obviously sped things up. How has it redefined what we traditionally call the classroom? Susanna, I don't know if you want to contribute to this.
At least for us, we just introduced the iPads now. We had only 2 classes, so the speed is just, okay, now everybody has it. I think there's still, now that we've got the iPad as an instrument, the next step is just to change more the content and the way we use it. So the first step is just to have it just in case of. We have to stay at home because of COVID, and now I think we have to think of the next step. Okay, now it's no COVID, hopefully anymore, so it's going to be presential for everyone. Let's see what we can do with this instrument here, and let's try to change the contents and the way we teach, just to make it more to the future and hopefully faster than we thought before.
Right. So in terms of the way you teach, how are you sort of changing it? How are you implementing it with technology?
For us, I think it depends on the way. Now, the good thing is that we use it first just to put groups together, which is something that during this year, at least at our school, we couldn't. So we can just use it for mixing kids that cannot be together in class. It's more about also, I think, the way of self-learning and self-assessment through technology, that we can give the kids more, they don't really necessarily need our feedback, because if we use the proper apps and the use of technology, they can get immediate feedback thanks to that. And that's how they can all find their path.
Right.
But I think there's still a way to find this new.
Are you providing them with iPads?
Yes, they do.
Okay. You think about, like, during the pandemic, there were a lot of, like, for example, in the UK, a lot of children that didn't have access to technology. So, it's like you have to...
No, that's the problem for us at school. At the first 3 months, or before the summer they didn't, and that was the problem, because some families, of course, maybe they had one iPad, but if they had 3 kids and the parents working at home, nobody had 5 devices, or if they had the mobile phones, which are certainly too small. But now the school decided that as of September, everyone had it. But of course, that's the lucky thing of working for a private school, not public school, and also in underdeveloped countries, not everyone could afford that. So
Yes, exactly.
We have 800 iPads working at the same time every day.
Wow. So that
So it means people taking care of, huh?
yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean that's fortunate, isn't it? And Serena, what about at your school? How did
I think COVID. I'm not a teacher, but it really shook things up. It pushed teachers, and maybe the three of you can give more examples, to really think about how they deliver material. It wasn't business as usual at all. I think we were in a fortunate position at that point. Our head of school had lived through something similar in Doha 8 years before, with the MERS, the Middle Eastern virus, and they shut down his school in, 48 hours, and nothing was planned, right? And I remember that he pulled us, the senior leadership team and operations team, together. I think it was January 20th. It was like yesterday. And he said, we're planning everything right now to go completely digital online in 3 weeks. So he, kind of mid-February, and we were very lucky also because we had a lot of those devices already. And the previous year we'd set up a platform for elementary school, and then we had, the Google Classroom for their older kids. So it was delivering the material. And I think the first reaction of the teachers is, we just have to make sure we give them all the work. You're pushing work or homework or ideas. Yeah. And then it's like, these kids really need interaction, right?
Exactly.
And then so, once everything got rolling, and I think we were lucky because we were more prepared than other schools because of our leaders' experience, we started doing surveys that would go out to the parents to get their feedback and the students' feedback, because there's always room for improvement, and this was unprecedented territory for everybody.
Okay, so and what were the challenges that they were facing with remote teaching, for example?
A lot. Well, I think these guys could probably tell you more, that they are the ones on the other side, right?
Yeah,
but from a
it's
teacher's
not a
point of
question
view,
of individualizing, but personalizing, which is different.
Yeah.
And I would say this is one of the main points. And then there are many, many applications and apps and ways of giving to the kids and up to the teacher works they do and all the comments about how to improve, etc. And of course, it's a question, when we were in the lockdown, we made special timetables, and they have time for everything, even for splitting up into. Because with the iPad, you can split up a class into 2 different groups and do different things. And, we are lucky. I repeat that. We feel very lucky because we gain in quality of methodology, but we were ready we had the devices, we had the professional development, we had the training, because it's important to train teachers in that. Because otherwise they think that the question is giving them work. It's not giving them work. It's creating a new kind of work, which is different.
As a consumer of the education that came through with COVID, firstly, it was incredibly impressive the way that all the schools sort of got onto virtual teaching as quickly as they did. But what was really interesting from my perspective was how, to begin with, it was quite traditional the way that teachers tended to use the technology. You had the teacher teaching to the class in much the same way, and instead of being in a classroom, you're all watching a screen. And then very quickly, in the space of 6 months, the teachers suddenly found really interesting ways that they could use the technology.
Yeah, exactly.
And again, it was this moment of time where you were freed from all of the preconceptions about how teaching should be. And teachers found sort of new ways of using the technology.
And it's not only the question of iPads, it's the Zoom conference, the Teams conference, any other kind of way of communicating.
They were kind of reinventing themselves, right?
So yes, apart from the Zoom and the Google Meet, what other tools were they using?
In school, different applications and platforms.
It was mostly so. I could see it from the IT perspective. We had several meetings for weeks before the final curfew, the definitive curfew, planning how to do it. But it was more about the platforms, the general platforms, rather than the exercises, because you don't know how the teacher will experiment the experience of teaching. So you have to leave some room for them, if it ever happened, which it did, obviously. For them to feel whatever they felt most comfortable with, because after all, they have to feel comfortable with the class. Otherwise, they will be more focused on the technology than on what they're teaching. So it was funny because initially many of the teachers bought blackboards and whiteboards for themselves in their houses, so they could, as you said, they could continue their classical. And many did throughout because they have achieved, reached a certain age, and they can't even think about switching to newer things, which eventually they did.
Right.
So for a while it was just surviving, let's say, and no one was prepared to do the switch so fast, as in from a Thursday to a Friday, which was what exactly happened. And then gradually educating them and teaching this. Okay, we initially had this platform. Now we're moving to this one. So this is how you have to do it. Luckily we had the Easter break, which was a great opportunity to switch things to better technologies and to teach the teachers new tools.
Yeah, because I mean it's a new way of for the teachers, not only the students, but how to manage the classroom, online, and also gaining their attention as well. The students.
Yeah, that's the hard part.
That's the hard part.
So teacher has to be really, really creative. If not, they disconnect, and there's no way of saying listen and here. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Because you are the other part, the other side of the screen.
Right.
Yeah, and you would have different. I think for the older children in most of the schools, they would try to follow the regular school day, right? And at first, those core classes were most important, and then they got more creative to be able to bring in, the regular elective classes or music or digital technology. But the kind of panic was, we need to deliver the core, right? But I think with the younger children, and you have younger children, I believe, a lot of times what they did was the teachers would have to do preparation before, and they would record sessions. Yes. Right. So for like a 6-year-old, the parent has to work at home also. How can they be online? So they would record sessions and exercises and use different platforms or technologies to do that. Then the students would watch it. And if it was at 9:00 in the morning, great, but maybe the parent couldn't be there to help till 11. And then they would have a group session, a Google Meet with all the kids or different small groups. And they would just have to reinvent, and depending on what the topic is, work it one way or another. And then like you said, the break-off groups were difficult. Children with learning differences, how do you deliver that?
Yes.
For children, I think one of the biggest struggles was for children that in international schools, that English is an additional language. You're not in the classroom. These children are coming from, Japan or India or France, or it's their first, maybe 6 months? Yes. In an English learning environment. It's their first year. How do you deliver an English as an additional language program virtually?
Yes.
So there were challenges.
Yeah, for sure. And also not only that, but the parents, having to work and help with their children at home.
And parents who don't speak English. So that's a whole nother challenge, right? So it's complex, right?
It was another challenge that was the 24/7 classes, right? At least in our case, students were sending emails and questions and chats all day and all night.
They still are. But to be honest, I think that's the good part, because I get so much closer, because otherwise you have to come across them at school, and at big schools like ours it's sometimes difficult. Now they just write you, hey, how are you? But it's just they expect you to be you didn't reply, or you just left me, just like with but I think that has, even if you're far away, but you get closer to students. This is something that I can.
So that's the positive side of remote teaching.
Yes, and it stays now, that even if we physically are at the same place, they still use this tool to communicate with you.
But they think you are a 24-hour call center.
Yeah.
But also, Patricia, you were talking about how, in terms of when the children came back to school, they had problems with social interaction.
Yes.
So how did you...
They have forgotten how to interact with the others. Right. It took a time, but we were aware. Kids of 7, 6 years, 5 years old found it difficult to communicate again with the rest of the peers. Yeah.
So because they were 3 months they had been.
3 months plus the summer. Which here is long.
Yeah.
It's 2 months.
Of course.
So after 6 months or 5 months, the kids were used to be by their own. So they used to play with the ball against the wall. And that was the thing. So we were amazed about that. It was awful.
Did you find also with the students that, they had any kind of, mental sort of challenges?
Well, I mean, we did many workshops to take all the fears they had. Many of the kids had fears. Many of them had listened to horrific stories. Others lost families, grandmas, granddads, different things. So they came to school feeling home, but with some kind of fears. So we work on them for the two terms.
Okay. And that's part of the personal development.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I think is
Yeah,
equally important. I'm very
No, of
happy
course.
to hear that you've implemented that.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely important. I mean, when they have their minds busy with their own problems, they are not able to learn, and that's the main thing. And we found out many years ago. So giving them the opportunity of having special workshops where they can, in a kind of Socratic way, explain problems, situations that they are being through without, nominating someone. I mean, Patricia, one boy said one day that kind of things, and they feel that they are able to speak and
Express.
and to express themselves.
Yeah, very important.
Yeah, and then we dramatize the situations they explain so that they can learn from that. What was wrong here? Okay, so how can we do that again and have a very good answer to that situation? So they are learning by doing.
Great.
And it's very important.
Okay. And what other, classes have you implemented since COVID? I mean, within the school, yeah.
From first grade till second batch.
Right. But how do you in terms of like children with different abilities, how do you manage that in the classroom, in terms of learning abilities?
Well, in terms of learning abilities, since the beginning, when they are starting to read and write, we have a system. They divide the kids. We have 50 kids per level, and we divide it into 4 groups. So immediately you see how they develop and how they learn. So we divide it into different levels, and they go their own right and their own path till they get to year 3, which means 8 years old. Then we start working together in bigger groups. But they work in small groups, so they have their own path of growing and of maturing and writing and reading and comprehension.
Great.
So,
and how many are in the class?
From 3 years old till second of 8 years, they are divided into 3 groups of 17 kids.
Okay.
17
Okay.
kids. And in many classes, they have 2 teachers. So we can attend what I call diversity and different talents and right.
Okay. And developing the talent. And actually, Jacobo, you also talked about, kind of like pushing your students and, the ones who are fast students, you sort of let them sort of study on their own, but you then work with the students who are a little bit, behind, but you develop them to keep up.
Yeah, well, so I think nowadays all the schools try to cover the basis and to have a large base, because that's what, the school is sustained on having students. But what doesn't always happen, we've had a conversation previously where we were talking about this, is that those who are more talented need to develop that talent. It's very easy for them to get bored if you are very good. Math is probably one of the subjects where this is most obvious, but since I am an IT computer programming teacher, I can also see it very much in my classes. Those who are most talented or who can learn easier on a specific subject can very easily be very, very bored while waiting for the rest to develop to finish their exercises. And what happens is that if they are bored consistently, they lose all the interest in something that they should definitely be racing through. And it's really hard in several ways. One is the teacher cannot leave those who are, cannot just drop some of the students if they're getting behind. So the focus has to be on these students who have a harder time learning in this specific subject, while trying to empower these other ones to go further on these subjects. And this is really hard, because you don't have the time. The time is the resources are specific, are a specific set, and the time is very limited.
Yeah, you need the resources, like Patricia was saying. And Susanna, you also are involved in developing talent. So what do you focus on? What's your focus when you're thinking about developing talent?
It depends. On one hand, of course, as a math teacher, is what you said, they get bored, right? And it's just, you can either give them more, but not more of the same, but more intense, more in depth. Or what we're now trying to do is just get more to the interest of these kids. Because some of these times, they don't, a lot of them are not very good at math or other subjects, but they would like also to know about politics, economics, things that we don't teach at school. And another approach would say, okay, you can just do what is mandatory, what the others need 5 hours for, you can do it in 4. And in the rest of the time, we could put some time together, just, I don't know, say 3-4 hours a week, and you can learn another subject or something else that you're interested in, right? So it's not that you get much more advanced, but since you've got so many different interests, so let's try to fill in those interests you have that you normally don't get at school. And I think that's another way just to engage these kids, right? Not only subject-based, but also content-based with other skills. And I hope that also would like to be a kind of talent development, which we're trying to.
I was going to say that this is also good to find other talents.
Yeah, that's great. So it is about empowering each student.
Yeah.
And Patricia was also saying that, you were developing particular students based on, not limiting them, but
exactly.
But also, finding their skill.
Finding the strong skill and then pulling them, up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we moved from a gift and talented program to a kind of general talented kids program. Because it was amazing. We have one test passed through all primary, and out of 300, there were 131 talented kids, which was amazing, 1/3. I mean, we couldn't not do anything with them, So that's why we started a new way of planning the classes and
Okay, what was the test? How did you?
Well, kind of 3 different tests, IQs plus other tests that exist on the market, and they gave very, very, very good results. That thing.
So you basically, made them feel like they were on stage.
Exactly, that's the thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think that gives us a very good result.
Which is fantastic, right? I mean, the ideal is to have an education individualized for every child.
Yeah, of course.
But as we were talking
Not
earlier,
realistic.
We're also limited by resources, right?
Of course.
And that's the issue that every institution, every school is trying to deal with. You've got limited resources and more or less limitless demands from all of the children that you're teaching. So how do you manage your resources to be able to provide that kind of individualized education process?
Well, I mean, we prioritize,
right,
and that's it. I mean, there's nothing else. We don't have a kind of sponsorships and grants and that sort of things to be able to, because it's not part of our culture, I have to say. In our families, I guess I could, but we haven't done it because our perception is that they will not react so good as your families to come here and say, listen, you have an amount of money, dedicate that to this specific program. You know what I mean? It's just, we are Spanish, so that's important. And it's not part of our culture. And I hate that because I think it's very important to have families involved. But families here involved in another kind of ways and not this one.
Do you think because I've often thought about it, do you think companies would invest in that? Because I would like to have a sponsor, right?
I don't know.
I don't know if it's Bayer or any, pharmaceutical or tech company to say, okay, this is going to be the future. These are going to be our future people working for us. I put some money, then proudly sponsored by whatever. Yeah. I don't know.
Would you
invest?
Yes.
Why not?
I mean, this is aligning them to real world skills, isn't it? Real world life, basically. And I think it's so important. It's like aligning education to actually what they're going to expect in real life.
I can tell you my experience from the Spanish Olympiad, which is very much focused on. We also in Spanish schools, there's not much education on computer programming. So we also have to do this part. We do the contests, but we also teach them. And it's really hard to find large companies who sponsor the Olympiad. Really, really hard.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's translating it to them, isn't it? Into the companies. Like, okay, what you're investing in the student, and this student.
Yeah, because it's a long term
Yeah, it's a long-term investment.
Yeah.
So that is trying to
Change the mind. Yeah.
change their mindset and
So
think about-
we've done. Oh, go ahead.
No, please.
Fundraising since 2007. Annual fund campaigns, and it's very different than the United States.
Yeah, I know.
United States, every class wants to get 100% participation. When we talk to, different international schools that we belong to associations with, 35% participation in Europe, the UK apart, is really high for participation at an international school. Yeah. But I ran the fundraising for several years, but despite what a lot of people thought that Spanish families don't give, they were our largest donors.
Really?
Because they were the long-term investors in the school.
Okay.
Right? Instead of an American family that might be here for 2 years and they're finally like, I'm off the hook from people knocking on my door, the church, the school, the firehouse or whatever while I'm in Europe. They do support, obviously in the United States, you have financial and tax benefits from it that you don't have here. But some of our largest donors were actually Spanish families.
Amazing.
That was
it was a huge surprise to us. We did not expect
because
it
this is not
at
our
all.
culture.
In Catalonia.
Yeah, especially. Yeah.
Amazing. But actually coming back to, Spanish education, according to research conducted by the CEO World on a list ranking for the world's best countries for education, the UK, the US, Australia, Netherlands and Sweden are amongst the top 5, but Spain falls into a much lower ranking of 45. Why do you think this is? Susanna. Sorry, why did I call you Patricia? Sorry. Susanna, you can probably give some insight into this.
I think it depends also on the methodology. I think the contest will be more or less the same. I mean, on the basics and the main subjects, on the core subjects, it will be the same across countries. I think it's more the methodology. And first of all, the way, either if it's more memorizing, which I think that's the point in Spanish system, or at least in the traditional. I hope that it's not like that in the future. And one thing is that you memorize, and another one is once you have to apply it to reality.
So memorizing is like we should change that.
I think so. I mean, nowadays you can Google everything, right? So why some things are good, but I think we have to you know what we have in our hands and make use of it rather than memorizing. I mean, of course, I'm not saying forget about it, but please go. And I think that would be one of the key points.
Is Spain implementing this, do you think?
I hope so, but to be honest, when I was doing my master's to become a teacher 4 years ago, and we did our exams, and at university it was really good because the exams were not memorizing. I did it at a Spanish university, and I said, oh, that's great. But most of the other students who were doing that with me, they were complaining. At the end of the exams, they say, hey, but you didn't ask me this, and yeah, but we had. And I said, if these are going to be the teachers for our kids, I don't think that it's going to change as fast as I would like to.
Okay.
So
what about the German system? I mean, is that different?
I think it's different. I would like to know where the Germans are there, because I don't see them up there, and for sure they haven't been. But I think it's not ideal as well. But what I like about the German system, at least 30 years ago when I was studying, and now still is like that, it's more the critical thinking. So you have to go one step ahead, and it's a lot. Don't memorize, but tell me why. Why do you think? And I think that's something, at least, that I don't know if in the end you have to know how this results. What does it mean to be in top 1 or 2? What variables are measured to say that? It's like saying that the Finns say that they are the happiest country in the world. Yeah, but why? I mean, okay, I cannot. So I would need to know that. But at least for me, I want to have an individual who thinks about the why rather than repeating what someone else has said. But on the other side, I think that, I don't know, I don't want to come into politics, but I think that sometimes for some governors, it's easier to have, I don't know if you say how you say it in English, the sheep just saying yes and amen to everything, rather than people with critical thinking. So I don't know how fast we're going to change that. If the people who decide on education and the future of education are the people who are in charge of running a country. So I don't know, just leave it open.
They need to be more in touch.
I don't know.
Roland, what's your take on this in terms of, sort of the way we should be learning and changing the way we learn or memorizing information?
Well, you asked the question at the beginning about what has changed in teaching, and there's been a lot of change that's taken place, particularly during the COVID crisis. But for me, what's most interesting is how much hasn't changed actually in education. When I went to school a long time ago, there was a teacher at the front with a whiteboard, and they were writing things on the board, and then there was a set of kids that were imbibing that information. And if I go into my children's class today at the ASB, which is it's an excellent school, and it's actually right at the forefront of innovation and really top class institution, but it's very similar. You've still got a teacher at the front, and you've still got all the children. They may have iPads, but the way in which education exists today is very similar to how it was 50 years ago, and you can go back even further than that. But if you look at the way that society has changed, and you look at the way that companies have changed, and you look at the way that what kind of skill sets companies need, and how rapidly you have to be educated now over time. You don't just go to school, come out, get a job, and then don't get educated any further. It's an ongoing process. You think about all those changes, and yet how little education has, relatively speaking, changed. That I think is as important, at least, as how things have changed.
I mean, in terms of the setup, you talk about the setup of the classroom. Do you think that needs to change? I mean, it's very much the traditional classroom that you had. Your children still have it. How do you see that should change, or
I think with all kinds of innovation, it's always really difficult to say what the end result is going to be. Innovation takes place, and there's a lot of small changes take place, and then over time you see the sort of directions that things are going in. But as an example, at the moment, we were talking about it earlier, education still seems to be very much sort of driven by producers, by the teachers. The teachers or the governments come up with curriculums, and the curriculums are taught to students, and they're either taught better or worse, and that determines whether a school is good or bad. But I think in the future it can become potentially much more consumer driven. What do actually the students want to have,
yes.
or what do the companies that employ the people that the students want to see out of an education process?
Yes.
And maybe that can become more individualized.
Student involvement.
Well, let me give you an example. It's a company that I'm looking at the moment, and this company it employs 9,000 teachers, and it takes them approximately 11 minutes to interview a teacher and employ them. Can you imagine that? These aren't obviously your traditional teachers all the time. They're often university students, or they're people in teacher training or whatever. But they're all on this system. And then the child, if he has a question, a homework question, he can actually go and find a teacher, looks up sort of philosophy, finds philosophy in his thing, clicks on a button, and then a couple of hours later, he's sitting in front one-on-one with a philosophy tutor because he needs to answer that philosophy question. That kind of change that can take place is immense.
Yeah, so more interaction.
Yeah. I think what you were saying before, having the teacher in front of the classroom, I think traditionally you have the teacher as the sage on the stage, and that's really changed a lot. I think the teacher's now role is much more of a facilitator in the learning process, right? They're walking around the room, the students are in different groups. When you're talking also about what this classroom look like, we're all trying to create new facilities, right? And have it set up differently. We just finished our new middle school building. We might have sofas here, high tables, low tables. Everything's adjustable. You can move it all around, open up classrooms. And kids learn in different ways, right? In different positions and in different mindsets. And so you really need to look at that. I remember looking back just as my children, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago when they were in middle school, when you're learning ancient civilizations, you would memorize, Mesopotamia or the Greeks or the Romans. And now we look at things completely from a different point of view. We look at compelling questions. I think in 6th grade, they do a unit on what has the impact of the great rivers of the world had on ancient civilizations. And so that gets the kids talking. Oh yeah, it might like this, you know, the river in China or the Nile or the Amazons, what does that look like with commerce? And then they do projects on it and they research it, and, you know, teaching in different ways and delivering the material in different ways that doesn't require, like what you were saying before, memorization of all the facts and then regurgitating it. And 2 weeks later, you don't remember it. You know, you remember this project you worked on with your friends or the science fairs that, you know, most schools do. I mean, kids remember that forever. They remember their digestive system that they built that was up on the stage and explaining it. You know, that's so much more meaningful for them than just memorizing facts.
Mm-hmm. So
I know like on a lot of our math exams, I've been giving to our new IB students, the equations are on the front page. Mm-hmm. Right? You don't have to memorize equations. Yeah. Now use these equations and apply them to this. You know, they might understand the whole mathematical process because they do one thing wrong with the equation and then they don't get the right result.
But that's life. I mean,
if
you're working, nobody expects you to know everything. You can look it up.
So it's much more important how you apply this knowledge and it's not about getting the right answer. It's about asking the right questions.
Yes,
right.
Exactly.
So why do you think that schools are so? I mean, you described something which was very innovative, but in general, schools are quite conservative. Why do you think there's this lag between, or why is this? Well, do you agree that there is this lag between the change in education and the change in the rest of society? And if you do agree with that, you know, why does that lag exist? Why are schools conservative?
Or lack of resources.
Lack of resources.
First thing, fear to the change.
Fear to change, I think, is really true. And I think it's the professional development, so resources for the professional development to help a teacher change their teaching style, because it's exactly what you said, Patricia. They might be terrified. I mean, I think COVID, you probably experienced it working with providing technology to teachers. Some of the teachers were terrified of having to give class on the Zoom. Some kids, you know, some of them were much more savvy at it, and other ones were terrified.
In this case,
so it's changing. It's making a change in how you teach, your profession.
I think in this way, COVID was an opportunity because, well, this is my opinion, of course, but among teachers, many teachers did the same subject many years. And being trained, I mean, being able to change requires practice. And if it's something that if you don't do for a long time, it's even harder. So in this way, COVID was a good opportunity because everyone had to change. It was either that or not teaching at all. There was no other possibility. And that also, I think, answers your question, in my opinion. When you are used to not changing gets harder and harder year after year.
How does coding kind of like, we talked about a little bit about this when we spoke, but coding also changes your mindset in terms of perception. How do you sort of teach that in your classroom? Because it is important.
Well, we teach coding from very early and up to at least 16 years old. It's mandatory, but not, the goal is not coding itself. It's more the relations, I don't know the word in English, but the relations, the flux, the diagram flux of how decision making and repetitions, when to repeat something. Coding is all about this, and that's the idea behind coding. So we do a lot of this for many, many, many years. And what's funny is that the kids don't get to realize that that's what they're doing. So for example, I used to. The first class I had with any class, I used to just build up an algorithm, which was, I discussed it with you recently, which was about collections. Someone who's collecting. When you're collecting, you buy something, you buy a set of stickers, and you look at each one of them. And for everyone you look at, you see in your album just by changing the pages, if you have it or you don't have it. So this is already something that's happening, and there's a condition here. You do this or you don't. And if you have it, you stick it. But if you don't have it, you put in a pile of repeated stickers. And this is a decision-making process that we are very used to it, but it's happening in our brains. And this happens all the time in every single situation in our life. And the more we are used to this decision-making, the better decisions we should be able to take, although we never know because there are all random things all around.
Okay, great. So you're teaching them about decision-making. And in terms of like, we were talking a little bit about education and how, obviously there's governments who are making decisions related to education. How can we make it more like, on ground level in terms of like, schools talking to each other and collaborating and giving ideas on how teaching should be impacted? I mean, Susanna, you can...
I think we should find spaces to collaborate, but not only schools at, I think some schools already do, but I think not only at the people working at schools, but mainly at students. They should collaborate as well, right? So we should try to find spaces for kids to work together, not only to see, but mainly to see other realities as well. When I think, for example, not now as a math teacher, but as an economy teacher, and I would like to talk about the labor market, I would love to have a class with a student, with a class in Nigeria, and talk about the same subject in another part of the world, completely different.
Yeah.
Just
now
for them.
With Zoom,
Exactly. So this is the chance that we have to use now and say, look, because that's reality. So take them out of their bubble, teach them, because that's the best way for them to see that even I don't have to teach them. They can research, they can do, but they still are living here. But let's talk to them about the same thing and investigate and all that stuff with somebody who's just somewhere else, far away, and let's build that knowledge together. I think that's going to be the good future for us as a society, not only in school, but we have to think beyond. I mean, school finishes officially with 16. They are not obliged to go there anymore. Some we will be in school forever, learning forever. But there's life after that, and we have to keep that in mind.
Yeah, so globalizing education.
And that's really interesting, because what the world does really well now is collaboration and communication. Yes. So it's completely possible that you could have a class with somebody from another
exactly.
part of the
world. And the companies do that. Why doesn't school do that?
Yeah. So you could be sharing classes at the same from different time zones basically, and sharing knowledge.
Yes.
But what's the answer? Why don't schools do it?
I don't know, but maybe I think it's the time. I think you always ask teachers, and some of them they really want, and they said, but I've got my curriculum and I have to stick to that, and I have to, especially in Spain, we have to do this, and sorry, I don't know if I now have to talk about. No, I don't have the time, but let them get a bit more relaxed. Let's take out of the curriculum things that are probably not that useful for everybody. Let's put it like that. And let's try to find these other places in this time, because that's what is going to be more and also more motivating, not only for children but also for the teachers, rather than teaching every time.
The controversy the teachers have in school.
Yeah.
When you plan activities and they feel, oh my God, I'm not going to finish the program. I'm not going to do that. Oh my God. And that's the thing.
Yeah.
We have an international program, and the kids take part in exchange programs with US, England, and France, and Canada as well. And they stay for 1 month or 3 months throughout the year. Mm-hmm. So the teachers at the beginning were, my God, frightened. Oh my God, what are we going to do? And then in the end, it was nothing, because the kind of learning they did in those countries was absolutely great in terms of living, developing competencies, developing, being assertive and being empathetic. And so it was nothing in the end. So we have around 35 kids every year, except these 2 years for the COVID, doing these external stays. And now the teachers get used to that. So, it's a question of going and insisting.
Yes.
As a parent, I've got another reason why I think that schools tend to be conservative, and that's on the parents, It's the thing.
As well.
What do you not want to risk? You don't want to risk your children's education. That's
nothing. You don't risk anything. The experience is wonderful. If you lose one term of geography, you learn that when you are in Canada.
Yes.
And so from our perspective, when we're thinking about sending our children to schools, we might say that we're looking for a really innovative school, but when it comes to it, what we want is the school that's going to deliver what we got, the exam results at the end, so that then we can go to the university and then they can
proven
get a job.
innovation, I would say, because you want the innovation, but you don't want your kids to be part of the test.
You don't
so you want it to be
proved.
so
you don't want to be part of the pilot program.
exactly. So they've tested it for 5 years. It worked. It's innovating. Now I take it. So nobody's willing to put it's just like having the first vaccine.
So, this service learning and experiential learning is so important. But it's what you say, Patricia, it might take time out of that core program, just as if you do a musical or you do a collaboration with somebody else. Something's got to give, right? Exactly. Every teacher has to give up a certain amount of time if you're going to do, a theater production, because you just can't fit it all in. Or if students are going abroad, with the IB program, and then also the service learning, the CAST program, a creativity, activity, and service. The kids, they might go off for Habitat for Humanity for 10 days to do a project. And obviously they're going to have to do some catching up. But that experience that they have in Senegal or Nepal or Romania or wherever, that's huge learning experience.
Yeah.
And just, it's fabulous.
Well, I think it's great for the students to create their projects and implement them in poorer countries, but they create the idea.
Yeah, well, it's really, the IB gives you, with the CAST program, it gives you this latitude, because obviously every school has their CAST programs, and maybe they have a CAST fair at the beginning of the school year, and you can offer different things. But it also gives you the latitude. We had a student who was interested to create your own projects, right? So we had a student who graduated last year that was interested in environmental systems. So he became a member of Save the Mediterranean. They would go down and collect plastics. They would do donations, things like that. And I think, having those experiences outside of school make a huge difference for the children. And then it also allows them to find their interests. It's like the program you're setting up here. Absolutely. Schools, it's essential for schools to provide other learning opportunities for the students outside of the core program. I mean, the core is not going to change. Math's going to stay the same. The hard sciences, everyone needs to learn some sort of history or social studies and your literacy skills, but creating opportunities outside of that core. We don't know what jobs we're preparing our children for. I mean, exactly. What the jobs that are now in the market, easily, I don't know the numbers, but easily 25% of them didn't exist 25 years ago. Exactly. Right? So, besides those educational skills or those core program, you have to provide them with other opportunities to be able to look for jobs and have those experiences in the professional world.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
same thing happens with the work experience.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, we are doing a work experience, and we took that from Scotland and Germany. I mean, where it's absolutely compulsory for everyone. Yes. And I think you do that in your school as well.
Working experience?
Yes.
I'm not aware, but I'm not aware of everything that's going on.
No, I don't know. But we started 20 years ago with that. And I mean, it makes sense, absolutely sense in terms of knowing what's going on outside the school and put the kids on the real life.
Yes, exactly. So,
and it's absolutely great.
So, Patricia, you're quite good at implementing ideas from other
countries. We do that. Yeah.
Great. Well, that's brilliant, because I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's about sharing knowledge.
It's about sharing,
and all of the schools coming together to talk about what works and what doesn't. And I think that's more real world learning.
Yeah, it is.
And let's talk about inclusion in education. So for example, in Spain, there's something called Title II, Equity in Education. Are you aware of this?
Yes.
Patricia. Basically, it emphasizes the importance of attention to diversity as a main principle of education.
Right now, it's really, really important. And we are a Spanish system, the more inclusive right now in the world. But we have real problems with that. I mean, because as always, it's a question of resources and money and preparation. And we are not prepared. So, I mean, this is something that the law passes and the politicians think is a good thing, but they don't give the resources to the teachers in school to put that into practice. So, I mean, this is true, and we are working on that, but I would say the way we can, because as a general point of view, schools are not ready for that.
Okay, right why do you think they're not ready?
We need professional development. We need the special people working together. We need guidance as well. Not everyone has the opportunity of knowing all the ways of learning, how the different kind of problems the kids have. I mean, so we need people working and assisting the teachers and supporting them.
So again, it comes down to resources.
Exactly. Again, it's always the same.
Okay. But do Spanish schools, I mean, do you think they're thinking about diversity?
Yes, they are. They definitely are.
Okay. And
But listen, let me tell you one funny story. Speaking about Finland, 7 years ago, we went, a group of directors from Barcelona, to visit Finland when Finland was the best in PISA results, the best in everything. But they were about to change everything as well, because now they are not in the best position. And we met with the dean of the university where the teachers were prepared, the famous one. So one of the questions we did was, what about diversity? And you know what he told?
We don't have.
What?
Yeah, that's true.
Diversity what?
this was in
Finland.
In Finland?
Yeah.
My goodness. And how many years ago was this?
5, 6, perhaps 7 as a maximum.
Wow.
So it's amazing. I mean, they used to get the best results, but when we were there, we realized that the thing was they prepared the whole year the kids for the exam. So it didn't make sense. And I know this is difficult to say, because it's difficult to say that in a loud voice, because it means, that you are criticizing the Finnish system. But it was amazing. I mean, we couldn't understand that.
On the other hand, and this is again just my opinion, I don't want to vinculate this with my employer at all, but as a system, it has to be fully diverse. It has to cover all different possibilities. But trying to have that every school is able to have any kind of student in all its diversity, I think that's not realistic either. You cannot expect that people who have lots of difficulties in learning to be along with people who are incredibly fast in maths or very sharp with philosophy in the same classroom or even in the same school. That's not realistic. You would need enormous resources.
The ratio teacher-student has to be.
So as a system, it has to cover all diversity.
Okay.
But I don't think it should cover
I think it's very different if you're talking about it's very difficult to do, right? And what one thing would be in the public system and the other private. We were at an admissions conference. I think it was the first one I went to about 9 or 10 years ago. And the International School of Brussels, which is kind of like a reference school for international schools. A lot of things that they've done is they are a totally inclusive school. So they'll have children with mental and physical disabilities and also more the core population, student population. And at the end, and they were very innovative with this, right? And at the end, the head who had just retired was asking all of us to go back and talk to our board of directors and talk to our heads of schools to ask them to try to promote this. It has to be funded. And this would be at a private institution. But then they said, a lot of the private institutions are funded by corporate, not at our school. Our school might be, 8% corporate, but at other schools, 76% of the tuitions are paid by corporations. And families are willing to pay that money to be able to send their child to a totally inclusive school. And he was saying, go back and talk to your financial directors and say, you're not going to lose money from this. This is actually a great investment and it'll pay for itself. Easier said than done. It's extremely complicated, but you're seeing that change in the international schools. I think the international school of Amsterdam in the Netherlands has now become an all-inclusive school. And it's slowly happening, but it's, like you said, Jacobo, incredibly complicated.
It's complicated.
When I was in Israel several years ago, and we were having dinner with a couple, and the mother was a teacher at a school. And she said that many of the public schools in Israel are totally inclusive. So it's like 2 different schools, but then they collaborate on many different areas. So maybe, for the arts and for theater and for sports and certain activities, they're very inclusive. And then for the core academic learning, it was separate because, the needs of certain students are completely different than others.
Okay.
But that was funded by the government.
Wow. But in terms of the core needs, why did they keep that separate though? Because
it depends if you have somebody with severe learning disabilities.
Yeah.
Processing, language, And
so
then
they spend more time focusing on that depending on the ability of the student. I see. Okay, so I mean, I want to get on to content and scoring and exams. So, as society evolves, at a more rapid pace than ever, the definition of literacy seems to be changing, not just in terms of reading and writing. How has, literacy become to be defined by technological literacy? Jacobo, I'm sure you can answer this. How are we implementing sort of this into education?
Technology with literacy.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, every time we have more knowledge as a society, as the humankind, but the time you spend in school is the same. So I spent as many years in school as my mother did, and probably as my grandfather did. If he went to school, I don't even know, but I guess he did. But the knowledge, there's much more knowledge. So now we have to care about technology, which wasn't the case when my grandfather was a student. So I think technology has provided ways that some of this knowledge can be learned from home. Mm-hmm. So I think at some point you were talking about how things have changed recently. In my opinion, the biggest change has been, since I've been teaching, in the last 15 years, that your students can now come up with questions that you haven't even heard about, which wasn't the case when I was teaching for the first time. If they were asking me about something related to IT, it was very strange. They would ask me anything that I had no idea what he was talking about. But now they have so many sources of information. Technology could be more adaptive and build the curricula based on an individual basis. I don't think it's the case right now.
It must be one of the most difficult topics to teach, because your students, even at a young age, certainly at high school age, I imagine in many ways are way ahead of the teachers in terms of the way that they understand and interact with the technology. It's almost sort of flipping the teacher-student relationship in a sense. It must be very difficult to.
As a teacher, you always learn from your students in one way or another. Sometimes even in just skills. You see a way they do something, even if it's just creative, and I would have never thought of that. But once it comes to technology, it's definitely the case. And also when it comes to regular contents about technology, because for example, there was someone recently who was doing a homework about what was the name? Quantum technology, quantum computing. I have no idea about quantum computing. So she was asking me, can you correct me this exercise? Yeah, sure. If you tell me the basics, I can add some additional knowledge if I know from here and there, and maybe we can see if this is correct.
But the kids love that.
Yeah,
love that when you say, "What? Let me check, and then I come tomorrow with the answer."
But this is something that never happened 15 years ago, unless they knew someone who. But now they have so much inputs from.
But the teachers panic about that.
Well,
being caught in something they don't know. My God.
Oh, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Before they were,
it's absolutely fun.
They were the source of information, right?
Yeah.
They were their primary source of information for the children, and now the children are receiving the information and knowledge from so many different places.
And
that's why going back to what we said before, that's why teachers now, they can't be the sage on the stage. They're not, even though they want to believe that they know everything, they're not the only person with the information. Exactly. So they have to facilitate in the classroom how that knowledge is being learned and shared, implemented.
Yeah.
Some teachers are not so happy with that.
Yeah, exactly.
But because they like to be the leader in the classroom.
Well, exactly.
But I think it's very important to give your students a voice. Let them sort of teach the class, for example. I mean, they don't have to, do you know what I mean? It's all about sharing knowledge and giving the student the power.
I know what she's going to say, and I totally agree. No, because she said something before. You were talking about teaching the students to be critics, to be very good critics. I think what you were going to say regarding what she was saying was that if they gather all this information, they should be able to differentiate what's true, what's not true, what's worth going this way, and guide them.
No, I was going to tell, I don't know why, I always have the perception of some teachers that they are afraid of being caught. I mean, I'm not afraid of, I'm learning with you. I'm sitting down on the floor with you, learning with you every single day. And I'm not afraid to say, I don't know it, because we cannot know everything. So that's why we can go and...
Yeah, but that's why you are here.
but exactly. But I mean, what's the point? And I mean, you don't lose respect. Oh, I mean, you gain, and I think that's the way you gain respect. And I think traditionally they think, oh no, they have to know, and it's like screaming or yelling at kids. I mean, you're not a better teacher by doing like that. I mean, they respect you for other things and for being closer to them and more a person, and everyone doesn't know. And coming to the other point, to saying what's fake or not fake, or what's true or not true, I think that's also very important.
Yeah. And then you have the other kind of students who are constantly checking what you are saying. Have you checked that? Oh my God. Listen, Patricia, but here they say it and you haven't said that.
That's good. That's good.
That's good.
They're listening.
That's the problem with gifted kids, and so in many classes, that some teachers don't like them because they are afraid of them.
So before it was teaching information, and now it's teaching how to use information, exactly. What information. But the teachers, it's, you know, I don't know the answer. Do teachers understand that? Do they get that? Is that now becoming the core of how to?
Well, I mean, I think so. I mean, as part of our admissions process, we have teacher recommendations, and we had 2 coming from the United States, 2 totally different schools. A brilliant boy, and one of them was saying that he was incredibly brilliant. He asked questions. He was able to do research. He was able to be inquisitive. He wanted to know. He would question me. He'd raise his hands. And then the other one was saying, he's incredibly annoying.
That's the point. That's the point.
Yeah. Completely. He interrupts me. He questions my knowledge. He's giving me more examples. He doesn't allow me to teach the rest of the class. And on one hand, you're saying, this child is brilliant. This is exactly what we want. Somebody. Yeah.
But when
and
you
the
have
other one, it was completely annoying to the teacher.
He could be bored also.
Yeah, no, he was completely bored. Yeah.
But when you are a teacher and you have 20 of those kids,
yeah,
I mean, you run crazy. Definitely.
They drive you crazy.
This is true because you cannot cope with everything and all the questions at the same time.
No, but let them do it. It's just a way of doing the class differently. You are the facilitator, and let them find out. But I mean, that's the point. I mean, if I of course, probably that's why I became a teacher so late, and now I say that I'm at the place where I always wanted to be. But if I just want to stand somewhere and just tell my stuff and want everyone to sit there and say, yes, mom, I mean, that would be boring.
They love to challenge you. No, of course they love to challenge you.
Yeah. But that's part of the fun.
What and you know, coming back to content, what do you think is important in terms of changing content and the scoring of how you examine content? What do you think is important in terms of changing it and making it, modernizing it?
Well, I mean, the Spanish system has a burden of content. I mean, we could reduce that, I'm sure. In terms of assessment, too memoristic, it's true. And kids are lazy about thinking. I mean, because they are not used to, or I mean, because they want the quick answer. I mean, and the quick answer is never thinking. It's learning by heart and then regurgitating, and that's it. You know what I mean? So the kids are really, teenagers specifically, are really practical people, and they want the best result with the least.
But while you're talking, I'm thinking of teachers as well. It's much easier to correct an exam or something, or to assess something that's just, you know, I have to compare 2 + 2 is 4, this and that. If you have to assess something that's thinking, it's more, I mean, it's a difficult task also for a teacher. So maybe that's why it hasn't evolved as well. I don't know. I was just thinking of it.
Now we are implementing what we call positive assessment.
Okay.
Which means you go over your mistakes and then you can get a better mark. If in the end you are interested in budget to get the best possible marks. So it's a way of learning, because otherwise you give a 7 to a kid and he's not interested in the other 3 points, because I mean, with a 7 I have enough. You know what I mean? So this is one of the important things we are implementing in school, and not everyone understands the importance of that, because they think they give too much opportunities and chances to the kids. But because this is the old style, and so we are coping with that here.
And essentially about exams, most of the teachers, or at least most of the teachers, can tell you the grades of all the kids without an exam.
Yeah, it's true.
So it's not exams are not do not bring anything useful other than just the proof of the grade.
No, yeah, exactly.
I think they need to change the type of assessments. I mean, they can't just be all exams, right? You can have oral assessments, you can have group projects, you can have presentations, interactive learning, because some children might be brilliant, but they can't do an exam, but they can find a different way to articulate their knowledge. So you need to give students different ways to share the knowledge that they know, which is not just, in Spanish say, haciendo codos, right? You put your elbows on the table and you memorize and you study, right? Yeah. That doesn't work for everybody. The way people, like we're saying, people have different learning styles, but they also have different testing styles, right? Definitely. And the International Baccalaureate, they have internal exam, they have internal, external assessments, they have oral ones, they have the group projects. And I think it's important for students to have the opportunity to be tested in different ways and not just on memorizing an exam, multiple choice, and a short essay or something like that.
Yeah, and also in terms of the students who are, they have, they're better at some subjects than others. So,
absolutely.
But you have to force them also, or encourage them, not force them, encourage them to learn about what they don't want to learn about.
Yeah. We did in 5 years ago when our new head of school came in, and I don't know if many other international schools or Spanish schools do it. I know international schools do. It's approaches to learning. So one thing is your grade, which is your attainment grade, and then so some schools also might just have an effort or an attainment grade. But they created a matrix, which was like attitudes or approaches to learning. So we have approach or your attitude to learning, your self-management, and then your participation and collaboration. And then it's either an area of concern, satisfactory, or an area of strength. Because you might, like going back to gifted and talented kids, you might have, before they would just get an A on everything, and everyone thought that was a great kid doing well in school.
But he's doing nothing because
he's doing nothing. His attitude learning is terrible. He doesn't participate, collaborate. He's actually disrupting the class. Yeah. And so when you give a report card now to a parent, instead of saying, oh, you got an A here and you got a B here, or you're failing or this or that, you might have kids that are getting C's, right? But their area of strength is everything. They're giving 100%. They're participating, they're collaborating, they're handing in their homework on time, they're managing their studies as best they can, but they're getting a C, but that's great, right? And so you really need to look at what the success is for each student.
Yeah. May I ask a question, because I don't know how it works, because when the kids at your schools do get grades, is it only on the written mark, or all this is also part of the final mark they get? Because for us, for example, they have got 50-50. But there's no way for me, because I would love to see both. I would love to see the results in the test. I would like to see the A, B, C, but I would like to see all the attitude as well separate. Because what we do is, by doing this 50-50, I get a bunch in there. And I don't really know who is great, who is not, who struggles with social competences or not.
So every teacher needs to give that information for every student. So you would
So I would get it for every subject?
For every student, you need to give them their grade, so what their attainment is on the examinations, what their knowledge of the subject is, and then you need to say in math whether they it's their area of strength, satisfactory area of concern, their self-management, their attitude towards learning, and their participation and collaboration.
But that's it. So I see all.
You'd see all of that in your section of the report card.
That's great.
Okay, so this is the new assessment that they're measuring different learning abilities.
Yeah, I mean, I think in international schools, I believe you probably receive that as a report card too, something similar. Schools work on it; they might call it different things. Right, but I think it's a wonderful.
We are getting there.
Yeah, the trend towards that, because it really and when you sit down with your child, you have something to talk about.
Yeah.
Right. You just don't see numbers, and on a lot of Spanish report cards that we see in admissions, you just see a number, right? But you don't know the story behind it. Yeah.
What are we trying to get out of education, right? I mean, what we're trying to get out of education is a happy, satisfied human being who is a useful member of society.
Very good.
More or less, right?
Has a love of learning.
Do exams tell you anything about that as a human being?
No.
They tell you you're very good at doing exams. That's it. And yet schools aim to get exam results. That's it's changing, but it's changing slowly. What schools are really aiming to get is a 34 or 35 or 33 or whatever on the IP score or whatever it is, one number. And yet what society, what you actually want from education is something very radically different from that.
Yes, exactly. Well, it's kind of, it's practical skills for life, basically, and implementing whatever you learn into life. So
and knowledge. You also need knowledge. You need
and knowledge.
You do need knowledge.
And knowledge.
And tech skills.
Yeah.
Yes.
and actually, Jacobo, we're talking a little bit about technology, but you founded EC Code. How are interactive programs in the classroom sort of being, sort of in terms of the interactive learning experiences such as this, how are they being implemented into the classroom?
Well, in general in schools, so it's and gamification, as you were saying.
Yeah.
It's ways to introduce probably different skills in a way that students usually don't realize that what they're learning or what they're practicing, which is good because sometimes it can be too boring, which on the other hand, I don't think is a problem if an exercise is boring. Sometimes you have to do boring things, but it's a way to engage them in different skills or different subjects.
Okay, but and you also think it's important to be able to provide this interactive learning for free, because you think education should be free. So are students naturally kind of like, finding ways in terms of, learning through these kind of interactive systems on their own? I mean, in terms of you created EC Code, what are the results you're seeing from that?
Well, so what we were saying before this was that, so EC Code is a platform to learn programming in different stages, from very, very small kids to up to 18 years old. And so what we were seeing is that when they switched from a visual click and run environment to a block dragging environment, to an environment where they have to set up different pieces, and eventually when they have to actually code and type every single letter in the code, every time it was a completely different platform, a different language, and they had to get used to all the environments surrounding this new platform. Which was a shock for those who were not very skilled in or weren't very talented in this area. So that what I did initially, and then with some other colleagues at work, with this platform in which it's not meant to be the only platform. It's meant to be used along with other platforms. So when you begin with the point click and run, and then you turn into other platforms, and then when you want to jump to the dragging blocks, you come back to EC Code, you see how it shifts from one stage to the next, and you get used to it, and then you can try other platforms and so on. It's a way to progress through the different stages and help them not be afraid of the changes.
Great, okay. But we've talked about, technological literacy. Do you think it's as important to bring coding into schools? I mean, Patricia,
Yes, of course.
Yeah, you're
Of course, we are introducing. Well, we keep introducing it because it's not so easy. It's not so easy, and not so easy to find very good teachers. Yes, no, it's true. And to keep the attraction or the point of interest in the kids, and this is it. But definitely it's interesting for developing different skills, problem-solving skills, which is really important. Attention to details as well in these kind of things. Data analysis as well, important things. So we definitely are interested in developing coding in the best possible way in school.
Okay, good. And at the American school, they have
Benjamin Franklin.
Sorry, Benjamin Franklin. Good, I'm kidding. Sorry, Benjamin Franklin.
No, they start introducing. So with the iPads, I think kindergarten through second grade has a 2-to-1, and then from third grade forward, there's 1-to-1, whether it's iPads or computers or bring your own device. But they're starting it. I was talking with the tech coach before coming. And she's saying, with the younger children, that are 5 years old, even, doing block code and things like that, it's becoming a second language to them, right? And they're understanding that. And then, like, as you were saying later on, that converts into writing code as they get older. And it's a skill that they all need now.
And what about young girls? Are they...
Interesting. So I was talking I wanted to get some statistics, right? Because I knew there was a topic that we were going to look at. In our computer science, the upper grades, which was introduced in the IB computer science, we started doing 3 years ago. Very small ratio. I think there's 10 boys in the class and 1 girl. Now you look 4 years later that we've started it in the younger grades, and it's almost in our 9th grade class, which would be tercero de eso, it's 50% signed up in the computer science class.
Great.
And then, so I mean, it's a big change, but it's a gradual change, right? Because as you start introducing technology at a younger age, you get more interest from the entire class, from both genders. And I don't know why. I wouldn't know why you always have more men in technology than women. Why is that traditionally true?
I don't think there's a reason, an objective reason. It's just the way it is, and it has to change.
In your university class, what percentage were men and women?
99 to 1.
Oh my God.
Wow. But Jacobo, you're involved in the women's Olympiad.
Yeah.
Speaking to the screen, speaking to the people.
Yeah.
So sorry.
Yeah. You're encouraging more women in coding. So, and how do you do that? How do you sort of bring them in? How do you get them?
So the idea behind this was that, well, in the Spanish Olympiad, in the Spanish Informatics Olympiad, we were having less than 10% registrations from girls. So we, out of other things that happened at the same time, we decided this year to create the Girls Olympiad. And so the idea is to build a community in which they feel comfortable, they don't feel that they are displaced from the rest, and it's worked amazingly well. We got almost the same amount of registrations for the Girls Olympiad than for the regular mixed Olympiad.
And so they did that
loving it.
independently. They did
Sorry?
it. They did it independently of the other one.
They did
They formed their own
independently,
team.
and those who we felt were feeling comfortable, we told them, well, I mean, this is the Girls Olympiad, but the idea is for you to gradually
Go there.
get here. So we have, I think we had 2 or 3 finalists, I think 3 finalists in the Spanish Mixed Olympiad, which, I mean, last year we had 1 girl who was a finalist, and before that, we have to go back to maybe 10 years ago for another girl finalist in the Spanish National Olympiad.
But it's in the Math Olympiad is exactly the same, huh? And
In math also?
it's exactly the same. And you see the prizes and all the pictures, very nice. Sorry, where's the girl? Nowhere.
And there's also a Maths Girls Olympiad,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
which has
Big-
many people, many
Yeah,
girls.
it's because of the same reason. I don't know why women keep on hiding.
Right.
I don't know if it's cultural that they feel that they cannot, or I don't know, or if it's uncool, or if it's, I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, you think with girls, I mean, I mean, it's, you know, the way well, actually, the question is the way girls learn and boys learn. Do you think there's a massive difference in terms of?
No, not at all. No.
So you see similarities in terms of, yeah.
I think it's cultural and the way they get educated. And I think it's more the role model. This is what they used to. And, if a girl is doing this, it's weird. Just like boys play football, girls do other stuff, and the other way around.
So maybe, yeah, it's because it's like always been a boys' tool, but, you know, it's their sort of area, and girls are only just being introduced to it.
Being cool or uncool, it's the same.
That's all it is.
Yeah, but
That's
if you create, like you said, with the Math Olympiad, the one that you've been doing for girls, I mean, we've done like a Technovation for girls, and if you get the girls together and they do it together and they create their app, or they can compete in something, it's very successful. But I guess when you're mixing them, it's when the insecurities might come out.
But I don't know. We also have the Technovation at our school, and the boys keep on asking, hey, this is so cool. Why don't we participate? Why is this always for girls? This is not fair. Because, why? And I said, okay, look around. How many girls are doing this? So we just want to encourage them by offering them cool things to do. And Technovation is a wonderful example as well for things boys are always complaining they want to do as well. So you need to find something similar for both, and for them to work together. But I think these programs are exactly meant to, just for them at least to try. To say, look.
I think when you bring the technology down to the younger ages and they're not choosing whether to take computer science as an elective when they're 13 or 14 or 15, But everybody's doing it in the classroom when they're 5 and they're 6 and they're 7. And then, they all get to do robotics as part of the program, and everyone thinks it's cool. And the girls can do the robotics just as well as the boys can when they're 9 and 10. They all should. Then it becomes natural. It's a skill set that both of them have. It should have absolutely nothing to do with gender. No, at all. Gender has nothing to do with it.
No, absolutely. So it's about bringing it together and making it be seen to be cool. Basically, it's changing the image of it.
Yeah, marketing.
Yeah, marketing, exactly.
Yeah.
So how can technology also make schools be more inclusive in terms of to assist those with learning disabilities? So
It's good. It's a very good source. For dyslexic kids, for example, there are special programs that they can practice by their own once the class is over, or during the class with the assistance of a teacher. And we have programs here for that, and they are working very, very well for those specific problems. And other ways, people with disabilities, of course, that can come presentially to class, of course, they can use all these instruments they have at hand, so without a problem, and follow the classes in a personal way. Other things perhaps are not so developed, but for example, for dyslexics, there are very, very good programs right now.
And also it's helping the teachers.
Of course.
Yeah,
of course.
So it gives them kind of interactive ways of teaching these children.
Yeah, even programs learning or teaching the kids to learn how to write. They are very, very good. We have one program here called Fiction Express for Spanish and Catalan. It's amazing, the kind of things they propose to the kids. And they start to develop very, very good skills. And it's absolutely planned, and the kids can follow it from home if they want, or the teachers work with the platform. There are different stages as well, and things to do related to different ways, styles of learning. So
dyslexia, dysgraphia.
Exactly. Dysgraphia
technology has just been, given them a huge difference.
And they work very well. Huh?
Yeah, tremendously. Or even is it called voice to text?
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe people who, might be paralyzed or might have, difficulty with their fine motor skills, things like that. Voice to text, or even listening. Depending, I think more and more, I don't know about the Spanish government, but I know in the United States and with some international schools, what you can legally do to give accommodations to students. So students, and sometimes if they have difficulty reading, they can actually listen to a text and then answer a question, right? So if they're very slow processing skills and an exam doesn't allow time, you get more time. But then you also might be able to listen to the questions and then you write your answer or you say your answer. Yeah. Okay. And before that was never permitted.
Yeah. And also it's enabling them to, learn to read and write as well. Yeah. Which is
exactly, or a book on tape, as simple as that. Doesn't even have to be technology. Before it was a cassette, but listening to a book on tape for a child that has, you're getting the same information, but it's very difficult for them to read it because there might be dyslexia, and then they're completely capable of processing what that is and answering questions and having a conversation or oral exam.
Right. So there's technology is advancing. Well,
absolutely.
The different styles of learning. So, just to round this off, what do you feel is important in terms of, the future of learning and what changes we need to see? What would you say, just Patricia, just what do you see that needs to change immediately in terms of?
Well, we need to change the teacher's perception about their job. I think this is the first thing important. Then they have to do of all the digital means we have at hand. And of course, putting the emphasis on the kids' development, personal development, and personal skills, and specifically over the contents. Although I agree with you that contents are important as well, and we need to find a fine balance between content and skills and competencies that are absolutely necessary for the future. And digital competencies are one of those, definitely. Okay. So there's a huge way to go through.
And do you think that, I mean, in 20 years' time, do you think we'll see a massive impact?
I'm sure.
Yes.
I'm sure.
People are in.
I'm sure.
Roland,
yes.
What do you feel?
I think that teaching is supposed to be it is teaching the next generation. In some ways, it's supposed to be leading society. And actually, I think that teaching is lagging what's changing in society, what's changing in the workplace, what's changing in the way that we live our lives.
Well, perhaps the society has to change first, and then you can adapt the way you educate kids, because it's difficult to go, step forward.
But that's a really big one, right? Changing society is a really big one. Schools, they can change. We saw that with COVID. In the space of a few weeks, schools went from doing something that they'd done traditionally for hundreds of years, really, to doing something totally different in the space of a few days. And most schools found really innovative answers to the questions that were given to them. And in the space of 6 months, teaching changed radically. I think that, teaching, the process of teaching can either lead that change, or tech is going to come in and disrupt the teaching model anyway. There's going to be new ways in which the consumers of what is taught get that information and get those skills that they need to go into society. Yeah, so I think that. Yeah,
but those skills without empathy, care about the others, values. There's nothing. It's a horrible word.
But the two are mutually exclusive.
Of course, but of course they are not exclusive. But we need to work on that, and it's not easy to cope with everything. Because you put the emphasis on that one, or you put the emphasis. The balance between everything, among all the things and the needs and the sources we have, is not easy for the schools.
Yeah. Which is why you're bringing in this holistic approach.
Yeah, that's my thing. Yeah.
Which is great. Yeah,
that's my thing.
And Susanna, what do you think will change, and what do you think is important?
I think it's important to have it reality oriented. So, what is the society needing? What do the companies need? What is life after school? Mm-hmm. And also, I think it should be more student oriented. So I think maybe I don't know, we have got many different systems sitting here. I don't know at which stage students decide, or they have the opportunity to say, I choose this subject, I choose the other one, or I choose the other one. So I think they could sort of maybe specialize a bit earlier, just to have more, just to get more room for things that they are interested in. Mm-hmm. I don't say not in fifth grade, not in sixth, but maybe from time to time. I think for us at the German school, for example, in the 9th grade is the first time when they can say, I want to, and they only choose between Catalan or French. Okay. And then it's not until 11th grade, so it's the bachillerato, so the last 2 years when they specialize. Maybe they could do something before that, they could feel, because they would feel also more as if they were the actors, by saying, I want to do this, I want to do that, I'm interested in this or in that. Of course, if you're not interested in anything, bad luck. You have to choose something. Mm-hmm. But just let them feel part, because otherwise, until you're 16, you have to do what you're taught to, even if you're not interested. So then you're not motivated again. Mm-hmm. So.
Okay, so it's aligning it with your own passion, basically. Yeah.
Not everything.
Yeah.
But at least you should find a room just to develop your passion, which should be inside school, not always outside, because there you spend most of your time, from 8 to 2, from 8 to 5. It's a lot of hours. Yeah. So at least find, even if it's a little thing that interests you.
Yes.
And try to develop that.
Okay, great. And making it more interactive. And also, just one last thing, in terms of technology, how do you think it's giving access to education in countries that don't have the privilege, for example? This is obviously a big thing. Jacobo, do you want to just...
It's completely out of my hands. I don't know. I know there are some projects, internet balloons and donations. We in Aula donate computers every year. We fix them and we send them through the lab to organization. But it's really hard because even in those cases, they have very old hardware, which doesn't allow them to run the latest applications. Even in this case, the dyslexia software probably requires some processing. So that's going to be a problem. However, coming to the other questions, there is something we that hasn't been brought up, and I think is really important regarding what has to change or what has to be introduced in education. I'm very worried about concentration because the focus that the kids nowadays have on any subject is very, very, very short. And it's something that requires training, and they're being trained the other way around. Every bell that rings, they just turn around. Well, if you've taught, you know that anything that happens in the classroom, it's always been the case, but it usually used to be just with the board ones. Now it's everyone turns around. It's just the bird flows around the building. And this is I've been telling this my students for many years now, that in the future I think whoever is able to concentrate for more than 3 minutes will be the best skilled in his job or her job.
Okay, so it's about getting their concentration.
Training it.
Yeah, training their concentration. Because there's a lot of students that have a problem with ADHD.
Yes.
Yeah, do you have
A
that?
special protocol, yeah. We all have. Yeah.
We all have, yes.
We all have.
Yes,
Yeah.
Well, some more than others,
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
And
I would say that is a bit overrated.
yeah, but I think we're finding ways to deal with that, and just your
I mean,
comment.
what we're all saying, I think, is so very similar, right? In order to have kids be more concentrated in the classroom, they need to be engaged in their curriculum.
Yeah.
In order to be engaged in the curriculum, we don't need to teach everything exactly the same way to the children. So it's really about what you said, training the teachers to be able to deliver a program which is more differentiated and more personalized towards the student, right? Yeah. If it's more personalized with the student, they're more interested, they're more engaged, and they're concentrated for a longer period of time. It's a catch-22, right? And it's so important now. And I think with technology, we're starting to have the means to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Obviously funding is huge. And I don't know, at our school, a huge piece is scheduling, finding the time to do that. Mm-hmm. What we were talking about before, do you pull the children out or do you create time? And we actually had somebody come in and work with the school for a year to create new schedules.
That's always the problem with it.
We
would love to do that, but if we've got 5 lines and it's impossible to have them at the same time.
It was a mathematician that came in and did it for us, and he was doing it in all international schools. And for example, they created a schedule so every single day in elementary, there's half an hour that's called win time, what I need.
Great.
So you're not pulled out of any other class. Yeah. So if you need to be more challenged or you need more EAL support, but it's money and resources to do that.
But it's the student saying, what do I need?
Exactly.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you everyone for being here today. And I hope we'll capture some important comments for education and also what's needed in the future of education. So thank you, Susanna and Roland and oh God, my memory is Serena. There's too many S's going on in the room. Patricia and Jacobo, thank you for being here today and being part of the Barcelona. See you tomorrow series. Actually, it's the Barcelona Tomorrow series.